Anyway, so I'm going to now introduce you, Helen. You're going to give me your title. You will let me know what you're going to talk about, and we will be very interested. And once again, thank you very, very much for saving For the Many Mondays this week by coming in at such short notice. Thank you, and I'm going to lean back and thoroughly enjoy what you've got to say. All yours.
Thank you, David. I'm Helen Anthony. I'm one of the key coordinators of Cell Kitchen. There are 3 of us, but we don't operate in isolation. There is a huge team of volunteers behind the scenes and on the street and in the kitchen. And without them, we wouldn't be able to operate. And it's 100% voluntary organisation, so we have no paid staff whatsoever. And that's one of the key things that we think allows us to do what we do, the way in which we do it. So I'd just like to give you some background as to how Cell Kitchen came about, what we were doing pre-COVID, what happened during lockdown, and how we're now trying to get back to the new normal, or the way that we're having to live life at the moment. So going back to the beginning, Cell Kitchen came about, it must be about 5 years ago. Group of people I think were initially involved with the anti-fracking movement in Chester, got together to feed people who were homeless and suffering from food poverty at the Fountains Roundabout, which is now the Super Trees Roundabout in Chester. And we were there up until about 3 years ago. We used to take flasks of hot water down, tables, gas rings, which we used to heat up food that people had prepared at home. So we were able to supply hot meals, hot drinks. We took clothing down and toiletries, and we're down in the underpass down there. As I say, it must have been about 2 years, along with all the rats that used to come and join us. And we actually did, on a Christmas Eve, we actually did a Christmas dinner down there. We took a gazebo down and chairs, and we fed everybody that came along with a full Christmas dinner, which was no mean feat. About 3 years ago, I met a lady called Jan Rosaire, who operates in Campbell Hall in Vorton, and she operates Campbell Hall breakfast drop-in for people who are homeless in Chester. She came along to the roundabout, we got chatting. I went along to see her at Campbell Hall, and the end result of that was we ended up renting Campbell Hall on a Saturday evening for the same period of time, between 5 and 7, which was our operating times pre-COVID, which was fantastic because there was a kitchen, there was a shower, there was a toilet, there was a pool table, there was a table tennis table. So we opened up there and have been running there for about 3 years now. As an organisation, we've also moved on. We've become a constituted organisation rather than just a group of friends with a bank account, and we are looking to become either a charity or a CIC. We were looking at this just before COVID, trying to decide which organisational structure would suit us best, whether it would be a charity or a community interest company, and we never quite landed on that. So we are now revisiting that situation again. In terms of what we do, or what we were doing pre-COVID, is that we'd open up in Campbell Hall for 2 hours every Saturday night, offer hot food, cold food to take away, sandwiches for people to take away for the next day, hot and cold drinks, clothing, toiletries, and support for anybody that came along that wanted to. And that could be homeless, street homeless. By homeless, I mean people who are sofa surfing or in hostels, basically don't have a home of their own. Street homeless, anybody who was lonely, anybody that was suffering from food poverty. We didn't turn anybody away. Anybody who felt the need to come along to us for support, whether it was food, community, conversation and a chat, or support in any other form, we just welcome them in and still continue to do so. We take a completely non-judgmental approach. We see many people who are fighting their own demons, whether it's with drug and alcohol addiction or mental health issues. or any other issues. But we're not judgmental about that. We accept that and we work with them to try and help them see a way through, and to get them into a position where they can move on with their lives, and we can help them do that. The key thing is to build up a relationship with them and a trust with people that come in. It's not always easy, it's not always instantaneous, but by coming to us on a Saturday evening and having some time out from life on the street and having some hot food, chicken dinner is always the favourite, it allows us to have those conversations and to build up a relationship and build up trust with the individuals, which then allows us to support them through advocacy, and it allows us to help them with their chaotic lifestyles in terms of trying to get them the support, the professional support they need, and to appointments that they may need to get to. So it allows us to do that. We also then help people when they are able to move in their own property. We go above and beyond in terms of trying to get them items for that property. And just recently, we've had quite a lot of people moving into accommodations, which is absolutely great. In fact, last week, just before I came away, there was a chap who had been coming to us on and off probably for the whole 5 years, certainly 4 years. Very difficult issue in and out of prison. He came out of prison at the start of lockdown. He was temporarily housed in a hotel in Chester, and he moved into his own property in Ellesmere Port last week. And I took some bits up for him. He was most keen to get his hands on a television, but he was absolutely overjoyed and over the moon. You know, his comment to me was, "I've waited a long time for this, Helen." And I said, "Well, yes, you have, you know, and you've got it now. So make the most of it, and, you know, make sure you don't lose it, because that's the next step. It's all very well putting somebody into accommodation, but you've got to give them the support structure to enable them to stay there, make sure that they pay the bills, and do what's necessary." So that's what we do. As well as that, prior to lockdown, we also ran a number of activities to people, again, to help build up relationships, but also to help them with their physical and mental health and well-being. So we ran, and we have opened up again, a football club for people who are homeless or have been homeless. The guys chose the name themselves. They call themselves Soul Survivors. And we train every week at Goals on Sealand Road. And we get a number, it's around about 8 to 10 people coming down. It varies depending on the weather and what's happening. But it gives them, exercise improves mental health, we know that. It also gives them some physical well-being as well. And it gets them to work as part of a team with the others. And that was very interesting in the early days, certainly with some of the guys. You know, it's not the blame culture, you're working as a team. And they've taken part in tournaments, both in Chester and also over in Liverpool. There's a fantastic organisation in Liverpool called Liverpool Homeless Football Club, and with some very inspiring people. And they have a league, and we used to, pre-COVID, take the guys either in cars or in a minibus over to Liverpool to take part in those tournaments. And they absolutely loved it. We had the kit, the shirts with Soul Survivors on it, and to actually have that identity to be part of a team was really, really important. In fact, trying to get the shirts back off them at the end of the session always proved quite difficult. And then we had training tops and jackets again with the name on it. So they were all very, very proud of that. So we did that. We also did something called Soul in a Bowl, which was some volunteers went into a hostel in Chester to do cooking classes with people, not just the people in the hostel. Anybody who was homeless could come along and join in. And it was trying to encourage people to eat healthily on a budget, so nutritious food, cook together, sit down and eat together afterwards. And again, it was that, look what I've made, you know, look what I've actually produced myself, not just the eating of it, but I've actually managed to cook this and prepare this. And that was hugely successful. But again, as of the end of March, that had to be put on hold as well. We were also starting arts and crafts as well on a Saturday night within Campbell Hall. And we had a walking club in the summer last year for people who wanted to get away from the negative influences of being in the city and take some time out, and we would organise walks with a picnic as well. That was all pre-COVID. Then COVID came along, and unfortunately everything had to stop. We couldn't use Campbell Hall, we couldn't do the football, we couldn't do any of the activities that we did. But then as part of lockdown, it was everybody in, which, to be fair, the government and the council got everybody who was homeless, and I think certainly in Chester they were very, very quick. They were almost ahead of the game by putting everybody into temporary accommodation in hotels in Chester and Ellesmere Port as well. So at the height of it, there was certainly over 200 people in temporary accommodation. Now, that wasn't all the people who were sleeping. Obviously, we never got to that many, but people who were sofa surfing, who were then told, you can no longer stay with us during lockdown. So they were out. There were people coming through from marital breakdowns, relationship breakdowns, and people fleeing domestic violence as well during that period. We were contacted by Gary Usher from Sticky Walnut, who had done some meal prep for us before. And he said, wouldn't it be great if I can get a restaurant who is no longer able to open to cook one night a week for these people in the hotels? And he put out a tweet, and it absolutely went crazy from there. And at the height of it, we had about 13 restaurants cooking. Plus we have about 6 church groups as well who were cooking for us, and some individuals as well, and business people who wish to remain anonymous who were supporting us as well with providing takeaway meals when we couldn't get the food in. So we calculated that when we're still doing that now, not for so many because the numbers have reduced, so we're probably now down to just over 100. So we are still providing meals, not 7 days a week as we were in the height of lockdown. We're now doing it for 4 days a week because we're open on a Saturday, there's somebody else open on a Sunday. And we were very conscious that we had to move away from that culture of spoon feeding people. During lockdown, there was no alternative. We were trying to keep people in, to keep them safe. Because of pre-existing conditions, a lot of the guys on the street certainly have got COPD, and asthma, and we were worried about the risk of them contracting coronavirus. So we wanted to keep them in, but as things have eased, we didn't want them to come to rely on meals from ourselves. So it's then sort of taking it away without it being a cliff edge approach, so that they could then start to provide food for themselves. And one of the ways in which they could do that was we also linked up with Crossroads Community Hub, and myself and somebody from Share were able to refer people for food parcels from Crossroads, and we're still continuing to do that now. So as the sort of the hot meals were stepping back, we were upping the ability to provide food parcels, not just to people who were homeless in temporary accommodation, but to anybody that contacted us and Crossroads who were struggling. We calculated the other day that during the period, as I say, it's still ongoing, that we've actually provided over 20,000 meals to people who were in temporary accommodation. And when somebody said that to me, it was just like unbelievable. But yeah, so that's what happened during lockdown. Since we've come out of lockdown, we've managed to open up Campbell Hall again on a Saturday night, but we're not allowing people to come in. The trustees of the hall at the moment are very concerned about having people to come into the hall for food. So we're operating it as a takeaway service at reduced time, so between 5 and 6 every Saturday. They can come and they can have toiletries, hot food, cold food, hot drinks, but it's a takeaway provision. And what's been really interesting for me is that the numbers of people coming to us on a Saturday is a lot less than pre-COVID. Now, I know a lot of people are in accommodation and have been moved on, but for me, it's just reconfirms the fact that it wasn't all about the food. It's not all about food. Yes, there are people who are hungry and they will come along, but for the majority of people, it was about coming along for that social interaction and that 2 hours of coming inside, chilling, having a game of pool, chatting to people, which is so important. So we were looking at ways in which we could potentially open up again, and to try and put social distancing in place. But unfortunately, a lot of the people who are on the streets, as you may well have seen in out and about in Chester, don't follow the social distancing guidelines. So that would be very difficult for us if they didn't, because we also have our volunteers who are there as well, and we need to be mindful of their well-being. So at the moment, we're reduced to takeaway, but we are still supplying meals in. Hot meals in 4 other nights a week into the hotels. The football started up about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's great, and we hope we can continue that. We've put in a risk assessment for opening up Soul in a Bowl again, with reduced numbers, and we're just waiting on Four Futures, who manage the hostel, to come back to us on that and just put some additional measures in place. And then we will continue to just monitor the situation in terms of what the government is telling us we can and can't do, as to whether we can continue with the football, continue with the cooking classes, and if we can hopefully get back to opening up Campbell Hall and allowing people to come in and have some social time with us. So I think that is probably, in a nutshell, what we were doing pre-COVID, what we did during lockdown, and what we're trying to get back to now. So if you've got any questions about any of that, please let me know.